So let me get this straight. There was this guy who was able to keep the reviewers together, who became corrupt with power, was split into several pieces that turned into other characters. Now someone is trying to release him and put these pieces together.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, boss, was that friend of yours guarding this area?
Yes, his orders were to keep anyone and everyone out just in case there were allies with the Emperor, which means that someone on the inside must have released him. What's the plan, Doctor? How do we get out of here? First thing we do is take Freddy and lock him back up again. If that person is still here, chances are he might try and help Freddy escape.
Then what? How do we get out of here?
Once we seal Freddy up, everything should go back to normal. Then we get everyone onto the ship and let the council know what happened here. Sounds like a plan. Where is this monster's prison? At the center of this boiler room, which means I'm your host, the C-Dot that knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. Well, we finally reached the end of this little adventure of ours, and suffice it to say, I hope you guys understand why I feel like Freddy is one of the most overrated slasher villains of all time. But we still have one final movie to look at, which will see how well this classic slasher character ended his career. This is my take on Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Critical and fan disappointment of Freddy's Dead, Wes Craven decided to come back and make one final nightmare film that was released in 1994. The movie was based on an actual event with the lead actress of the original movie, Heather Langenkamp, which led to what many fans consider the most polarizing movie of the series. Much of that came from Wes Craven going through a very cynical phase when it came to the horror genre, which led to the creation of the beloved horror series Scream. This movie, while having a much more positive critical and fan reception, sadly only made $19 million back against an $8 million budget, making it the worst performing Nightmare movie. Which just goes to show that even with a new plot and the return of the original creator, a sequel Camp playing herself as she tries to deal with the fans of the Nightmare series and all of the good and the bad things that come with them, including a creepy stalker that may have a close connection to the new Nightmare film being made by Mr. Craven.
Get him. Want me to get him? Well, I got him. My mouth is an Uzi.
The cast of this movie are just the real people that played their previous roles. Even some of the producers and special effects team are just playing themselves. The only important people in the whole movie who play different characters are Miko Hughes as Heather's son and David Newsom as Heather's husband. Supposedly, Wes wanted to get Heather's real-life husband to play himself, but he turned down the role. Wes was even going to get Johnny Depp back as well, but Johnny was too timid to ask him, although when asked, Johnny did say he would have been happy to be a part of the movie. I do love how the cast was able to play themselves quite well. As someone who has had theater experience and has seen other movies with this concept, it can be rather difficult to try and play yourself, especially when you have to play in a movie that is quite personal. Part is the writing. Much of that comes from Wes wanting to take his original idea and creating something new that hadn't been done before at the time, which led to him making Freddy into an ancient demonic entity that could only be kept at bay by making more of the Nightmare movies. At first, this does seem to be a silly little idea, but given the fact that the last movie had Freddy playing with a power glove to kill one of the kids, this was an improvement and made a well pacing. Many of the other films, while having bad writing, at least felt like they had good pacing. This movie tends to drag on in certain places, then it will snap back to the demon stalking Heather and having her go insane. Sure, the concept is better than the last movie, but it falls flat when the pacing makes you fall asleep quicker than watching the extended cut of Lord of the Rings.
Get him. Want me to get him? Well, I got him. My mouth is an Uzi.
This movie is just above average, and honestly isn't the best movie in the franchise. But I will concede that at least the franchise didn't end on such a poor note as Freddy's Dead. If you're curious to check out this movie, I would only recommend it to the hardcore fans of the Nightmare series. Since the film isn't canon to the rest of the films, I give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's really just an above average movie with some cool looking designs and a unique concept. Well, thanks for watching. I'm probably gonna get killed if I don't go over the rest of the Nightmare franchise. So, for the sake of not wanting to talk about anything else in this series,
My mouth is an Uzi.
back in 2010, a remake was made to very critical and fan bias. While I don't personally think that the movie is all that terrible, there are certain things about the movie that bring it down, such as the reuse of certain kills from the first movie. However, there are some good things that did come out of this movie, like the casting. Overall, I do recommend checking out this movie, even if it's not as good as the original. Hell, it's better than Freddy's Dead at the very least.
Get him. Want me to get him? Well, I got him. My mouth is an Uzi.
So yeah, back in the late 80s, an anthology series was created that lasted 2 seasons and gained a small cult following. Sadly, I find that the series is unoriginal and lacks any actual scares. It doesn't help that this show was sandwiched between 3 other more popular anthology horror shows like Tales from the Crypt and the 80s revival of The Twilight Zone. Unless you're a hardcore fan of the Nightmare franchise, I say skip this series, as there isn't anything worth watching that you can't go from watching other anthology shows or the movies in the franchise.
Get him. Want me to get him? Well, I got him. My mouth is an Uzi.
After I watched the AVGN's review, I decided to play the game for myself because, in my opinion, it's one of his worst episodes. I didn't feel like he was explaining why the game was bad, rather he just complained about how this was targeted for kids. Hell, he didn't even get past the first level. So, after I found it and played it, I felt the complete opposite of the AVGN. Sure, it's nothing special, and it is difficult, but a lot of games for the NES were hard, and this is no different. So I say if you're able to find it for cheap, give it a chance, and as I always say, don't just
Ugh, it looks so creepy.
Well, it was designed to keep an evil entity inside it. Enough. We're not here to judge the cage. We're here to keep this evil from causing any more harm. Let's just throw Freddy in and seal it for good. Oh, I don't think so, Doc. In fact, why don't we change things up a bit? Who's there? Ah!
Boss!
Will you meet friends where your odyssey ends? Will they have spots or polka dots or purple?